Thrive Guys, Episode 7, Dealing with Distractions.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I was going to start off this morning slightly different. You know, normally I give you a good morning in another language.
Yeah.
I'm going to start by saying this to you, Joe. 0100100 space 0110101.
I don't know how to respond to that, to be honest.
At least give me
good
a 0
morning to
1
you
back.
too, I'm guessing.
No,
Yeah.
that is high in binary. I was going to do good morning, but I figured it was going to long out this segment far longer than it needed to be.
Yeah.
Even those two octets felt a bit too long for me.
I was going to say you've kind of really narrowed down our demographic with that binary piece.
I tell you what, it's definitely up from here.
Yeah, indeed. I've got something to share that I haven't told you that has been an interesting thing this week for me. It's not my win of the week, but it's something that I just wanted to share with you, I guess. So I've learned this week that my caffeine addiction is a temperamental mistress. It's been. So let me explain.
Yeah, please do.
Because the silence is deafening. So I basically wanted to try and supercharge my brain by about mid-morning. So by about 10:30, I wanted to be in God mode. And I've been listening to this book. Well, I've actually just finished this book. It's called Make Time. It's by Jake Knapp and John Zaratsky. I think I mentioned it on the last episode, actually. And one of the tips that they have in the book is changing the time of day that you drink coffee. So trying not to have coffee right at the top of the morning, so not when you wake up, essentially, which was part of my morning habit. That would be what I would do all the time. But actually, because your body is full of cortisol when you wake up, which is to make you alert, actually it doesn't give you the benefit that you would hope it would.
I'm actually doing a live experiment with that right now because this is my first coffee of the day and it's a bit later than we normally do. So
yeah, it's like 10 to 11. I don't. Well, let me explain what happened to me, and you'll see how your experiment would just not operate in the world of Joe. So I did that, right? So I usually have a coffee at 6:30, right? So that's first thing I do when I get up. So I go downstairs and I make coffee. So I didn't do that. I switched to water. And then I went and did my walk and all of that stuff, my morning routine, etc. And so it would end up that I would have my first coffee at 8:30, between 25 and 8:30. By 8 o'clock, my head was like a kaleidoscope. It was just pounding and it was horrific. I was irritable. I was more of an unpleasant person to be around than I normally am.
Unthinkable.
Yeah, I know, right? It's who'd have thought that there was a low beyond the low that that was my baseline.
I'm shivering.
Yeah, I know, right? It was horrendous. The first day I did it. By honestly, 8 o'clock, I was out on my walk, and just all of a sudden, my body was like, "Whoa, well, what have you done? What have you changed? I don't like it. Give me a coffee now." And so coffee number one was kind of a bit of a waste on that first day. It was just kind of to stave off the world ending, but it did get me back onto an even keel. And the following, this is day 4 of this experiment, and the following days were slightly better. But what I did find is when I'd have coffee 2 at 9:45, 10 a.m., it was like a senzu bean. Honestly, when it kicked in, I felt amazing. It was a renewed sense of just positivity. It was laser mode. It was awesome. It was like I was operating at like 1.2x speed, which doesn't sound like a lot, but actually a 20% boost for like 2 or 3 hours was awesome. It was worth it. It was worth the headache in the morning, let's just say that. And the other thing that I noticed was that I didn't get the 3 p.m. slump quite as bad as I normally do. So it usually gets to like 3 o'clock and I'm just like, I don't want to do anything. And I didn't have that. And actually that's been the valuable, chef's kiss on top of the cake.
Oui.
So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. thought it'd be interesting.
No, I do think it is interesting. I think I'm going to maybe chance it myself and move my coffee breaks around a bit. We sometimes at work have like a mandated coffee break where they say, look, stop for a bit, have a coffee break, and just have like not shop talk really, just have a chat, a breakout room where you can just speak. Because I think that's the thing that people are conscious of nowadays is that you're at home all the time. Who do you speak to? Some people are at home on their own, so it's nice to just be able to have a coffee break, even if it's with your colleagues, but not just have to jump in a meeting room and be like, oh, by the way, what's going on with that? Or, have you got a second to talk about this? It's just like, it's turn work off for a bit and have a coffee break. So we've got kind of a routine, a weekly routine. So it might be worth just moving that time about a bit. Yeah, so I can be buzzing in the afternoon.
It was really fun. It was really good. Should we do Win of the Week?
Yes.
Win of the Week is our weekly segment where, before we get into the main topic of our conversation, we share something that we won at this week. A lot of what we talk about is how we squeeze every ounce of juice out of our lives every day, and celebrating the fruits of our labour is something that we both thought was really important. So I'll share my Win of the Week. I had the opportunity to stretch my hustle muscle this week.
Oof.
And to great success. So
I've never heard that as well. That is worth noting. Hustle muscle.
The hustle muscle.
And I'm on board with that. I think that's fantastic.
It's a muscle that every salesperson needs. When the chips are down, you need to get out the hustle muscle. It's almost starting to sound dirty now, so I'm going to stop saying it. But essentially, I had a key project that was at risk towards the start of February. And February is always a bit of a shorter month, so it feels the pressure is on. It always feels like 4 weeks is significantly less time than 4 and a bit weeks. I don't know why. It's probably psychological. So I set myself the theme of this week to get creative in order to find coverage for that particular risky project. And I stretched the hustle muscle. And not only did I find coverage for it, I've covered it twice over. And I'm actually in a much better position this month as a result. So, all of the planning in the world is just that. It's planning. Sometimes you need to fall back on the soft skills that you develop from a decade in the world of sales, and to, as I say, stretch the hustle muscle. So that was my Win of the Week. I'm dead chuffed with that, and I rated my week 5 out of 5 as a result.
I think your Win of the Week should just be the use of the term hustle muscle. I think that's
the fact that I made it up about 15 minutes before we started speaking.
Worth it, mate. Worth it. So my Win of the Week is slightly less interesting, and as you know, you reminded me last night. So my Win of the Week is that I released an EP, but just of stuff that I wanted to do. Yeah, but it's just music, just background music. But I'd been in a bit of a dry spell. I haven't released any music, haven't written any music for myself. I just haven't bothered. So it's kind of a win and a loss, because I've had a couple of clients asking me if I could do some work for them, and I've just popped that to the side for a bit and just decided that I was going to work for myself and try and get something out. And it's only a little 4-track of music, electronic music, but I enjoyed doing it, and that was for me a win, like being able to say no or not respond at all, which is a bit of an arsey thing. But I was just like, look, it's a couple of days. I'm not blocking out my calendar for 6 weeks and ignoring people. I was like, I'm going to take a couple of days and do my own stuff. As you know, with electronic music, it's pretty easy to just like get a bash for a mix and release it. It's not recording a load of live instruments. So it was just something I wanted to do, and something that I just enjoyed doing, which feels like a win for me, because I could just experiment and have a bit of a laugh.
Sounds great, mate. I'd be keen to hear it. So you kept that very quiet. So I know that you like to use pseudonyms, and you like to release under strange names. Like what was the? Because it was a name that I called you that I just can't remember now. I was being unpleasant.
Yeah, that's literally, it's still under that same name. I've got about 55 songs.
55 songs?
Yeah, I've been a very busy boy, but I don't feel the need to share it, because it's more like a passion project for myself. Like, I don't expect it to go worldwide. I enjoy it, and it's easy to have it on a place where if somebody ever does ask what you're doing and whether you're still doing music, you can just point them in a direction of your portfolio that isn't like, oh, check out my website, or here's a link to all of my different pages. You can just be like, yeah, it's on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, whatever. Because I'm really not about that, like being an artist. So
fair enough. Well, congratulations on the new EP.
Thank you.
Congratulations on song 50, 52 to 55, or however many you said. Insane. So obviously I do very different music to the music that you do. And so writing 4 songs would probably take me about 8 or 9 months. And you did it in a week.
Well, that's what I mean, is when I say it, it sounds a bit like, oh, that was, it should be very difficult. But there's a difference with electronic music. Once you've got a beat and stuff, it's just, maybe I sound like a bit facetious, but it's just putting some chords down and making it sound good, really. Especially when you've got a MIDI keyboard. In this kind of generation, that's it. You can can record in your own home, and it's a lot easier than it used to be. But when you do, like I've got a bit of guitar on it, but it's little picky guitar and stuff like that. So, but this is not a podcast about my music. This is about being productive and thriving, isn't it? So
it is. All right, I'll take the hint.
We have down today.
We are getting distracted, aren't we?
Exactly. It feels very nice going into that we have a podcast today solely on distractions, and you can see how easily we go off tangent.
Yes,
a brief
very
distraction
much so.
Because we're interested in each other's hobbies. God.
No, we are probably two of the most easily distracted people I say that I've ever met, but I haven't met myself. But you get what I mean. When we hang out socially, you and me and our friend of the show, David Bogner, spend probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours talking about 3 different topics, but we won't talk about one topic, then the next topic, then the next topic. We will go around, 15 different mulberry bushes in order to actually get to that.
I see our conversations like a tag team match. I literally walk out and I have to come back and say, all right, what topic we are now? Where are we? What are we talking about? And what have I missed? And then that's it. I get bombarded with the summary and I'm all caught up and then crack on with the next topic.
Pretty much. And so I thought, actually, with that in mind, it would be quite an interesting topic to talk about how we deal with distractions in our professional life. And I was inspired to talk about this from reading the book that I've been reading, which is, as I said earlier, Make Time by Jake Knapp and John Zaratsky. So they have something like 85 practical examples in the book to help you make more time for the things that matter. And one of the things that comes up quite a lot is getting into laser mode or focus mode. And, life is full of distractions, and distractions are synonymous with not achieving your full potential. So I was quite keen to open up the floor to you to talk about, what do you find distracting? What are the things that distract you from achieving that potential, and how do you overcome those distractions?
Cool. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that book, because I think I've gone down a completely different route, but on the same kind of topic. I was reading a book called The Art of Nonconformity, which comes across to me is a very kind of matter-of-fact book, but it feels almost borderline like a self-help book. And the whole thing about that is, like, you make time for the things that you want to make time for, and you make excuses for the things that you don't want to do, kind of thing. So it's about, kind of applying that focus and being like, if you have a long-term goal, what are your short-term goals to get there? And how do you list those out? And, because everyone's always like, I'd love to travel. And it's like, well, where would you like to travel? And you ask them and they're like, Spain, maybe. Somewhere hot. And you're like, cool. Yeah. But, I thought you said you wanted to travel. Obviously, you don't want to rip apart their conversation, but that's kind of how it goes. If somebody's like, I really would love to be a millionaire one day, you're like, okay, in what? And they go, I don't know. I'd love to be a millionaire, but I don't have any plans to get there. So how can I talk about it confidently?
Yeah.
So I listed my distractions into very ornate categories. I've got immediate distractions, longer term distractions, physical distractions, subconscious distractions, and personal distractions.
Wow, okay. You've really gone...
Yeah, I had a long think about it, because...
Nice.
As my girlfriend described me, she said, sometimes you're a bit erratic. So I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, brutal.
Erratic. There's no positive spin of that. There's no way that you can be like, you're erratic, but in a good way. It's a good thing that you're erratic. That's like being called psychotic.
So I'm going to start off with immediate distractions, and this is something you'll experience as well. So I've got a couple here, which is phone calls. It's immediate. Like, how often do you ignore a phone call, right? Normally, if someone's on the phone to you, especially in your job, you're like, I should take this. Actual conversation between human beings. Like when you're in the office, if somebody comes over to your desk, you don't just like put up a filter and go, nope, I don't want to be distracted right now. And I always tend to find it was difficult to be like, sorry guys, I'm busy, or can you leave me alone? Even at home now, when Kerry's talking to me, I'd find it hard to be like, I'm doing something. I'm not, stop.
Yeah.
It's about like, the human nature of being polite as well. I've got texts as well, which come up to me as an immediate distraction because my phone's normally on my desk.
Right.
And I've got, this one's a bit bizarre, but because of where my office is situated, I've put my window as a distraction because I've got River in the living room, physical distraction, dog, obviously, physical distraction. He comes over to my desk, puts his head on my leg, that's a distraction. To be honest, if I'm not focused on anything, everything to me is a distraction. I'm a walking distraction. I can't focus on anything unless I'm sat at my desk and I'm like, I'm going to do this. And it's where I thrive really, is being able to have that laser focus on something individually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be keen to see what you would describe as your immediate distractions. Do you have the same sort of issues with, text notifications or phone calls? Do you get a lot of phone calls?
Oh, for sure. Like, I think those sorts of things are always distracting. And one of the things that I try and do is, as we've talked about before, just remove all notifications from everything. My phone is like a dumb phone. It's not really that smart. I've taken all of the things off it that are distracting, apart from sort of the bare essentials, and I just remove all of that. So if that's something that if you're a distraction machine and you love to be distracted, that would be my first step. And that was my first step. So that's something I should probably recommend to you, Dan, as a first point of call.
This is my point though, is in my personal life, that's something that I've taken on board, and I've removed a lot of the notifications. I've removed items out of my way so I don't get distracted by them. But with work notifications, it's slightly different. And this is where I'm trying to sort of strike that balance in terms of what I want to be notified about. And this is where the automation comes in, what I want to automate and what I want to be aware of, and how you maintain your inbox, which we've already discussed. So I do feel like I'm pretty good at it. So for me, the main distractions are physical.
Right.
Things that I see, not necessarily just on my desktop, but like my phone ringing, people walking past the house, my dog, the ultimate distraction.
I don't think, if I was working in like the main room of the house like you are, and we had a little thing, dog, baby, something like that, just walking around being a cool thing, I would get very distracted often. And so for me, it's quite nice to be kind of locked up in a room with fewer distractions, and I'm very much on my own. So that's quite good. So I imagine it must be quite hard for you to actually stay focused, because you're working in the same room as Kerry, and you're also working in your kind of main living space as well.
Yeah, back to back with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
You'd think office chat would be, kept to a minimum, working back to back with your girlfriend, but we still talk about a couple of things, and she'll ask for my opinion on something and vice versa. Does this look right? I think it's more just for the social aspect. I don't think she cares what I think. She goes show me an advert and say, what do you think? And I'll go, yeah, I like that. Looks like an advert to me. Yeah. It's like, I'm not going to turn around and say, oh, have you seen this? Look at this CLI.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, look at this tech thing. Look at this bit of script I've written. How does that look? Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, very colourful.
My point. You just when you're at home and you're working back to back with your girlfriend like that. But I don't know. I don't really define. Can I define Kerry as a distraction, or will I get in trouble?
I think you need to be quite careful about what you say generally when it comes to.
Well, let's stop there then.
I will put my head above the parapet. I will say that I use Kaylee as a distraction. So if I want to be distracted, I will leave the office and go and chat to Kaylee in her office. And sometimes I'll just go and bother her because I don't want to do the thing that I have to do at that point in time. And so that is something that's, I think, nothing disparaging towards Kaylee. And sometimes when she'll come in though, on the flip side, because she's doing the same thing, and I'll be in like laser mode, I'll be like, go away. Like, I find it difficult to be distracted when I'm in that mode. I feel when someone pulls me out of the matrix like that, I'm very like, what do you want? What is it that you want? And so, because it's so hard for me to get into that mode, when someone then kind of pulls me out of it, it's very jarring. So I suppose my kind of main thought on the distractions that you've kind of alluded to there, I call it fighting my chimp brain. So my brain's natural state is consume rather than create. So I'm a creative person. I love creating, whether that be creating sales campaigns in my professional life, or creative ways to expand a product into the customer base, or editing a podcast, or creating some music. I love all of that. That's great fun. However, the chimp part of my brain loves every infinity pool you could think about. So email, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And it loves television, and it loves video games. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for all of that, but it's not 11:30 on a Tuesday. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really tough, in particular, when I have to do something that has no real deadline. So if it's something that I know I kind of need to get done in the next couple of days, but I've not set myself it needs to be done by this date. But also, if it's a bit of a pig to start. So if it's something that I don't really want to do, or I'm not quite sure how to start it, I'll procrastinate, and I'll jump into a WhatsApp group and start throwing shade, or
exactly.
throwing my hot takes or whatever. And so that's the bit that I struggle with.
Do you know my advice to you? And it's the most arrogant thing you can say, but when you get into that state and you are procrastinating and you don't want to start, just start. And it's backwards to say that, but I've done it. I go through phases where I have to do tons of documentation, and I think I just don't want to start it. But the minute I get into it, I kind of switch on that laser focus, and I'm like, I'm going to do it. Or I'll set a 25-minute timer and be like, bosh, I'm going.
See, this is the thing. This is what I try and do pretty successfully. It's called the do it for 5 minutes tactic. It's something that I read in Atomic Habits, I think, by James Clear. I'm pretty sure it's that book. But essentially, if you don't want to do a thing, or if you're procrastinating about it, you just tell yourself, I'm just going to do this for 5 minutes and then I'll stop, right? Because if you do it for 5 minutes, you trick your brain into getting into the flow of things, and then you end up doing it anyway.
Exactly.
So that for me is the way I try, and I'm basically fighting against my own brain. It's bananas when you think about it, but that's what you have to do. You have to trick your brain into doing these things, because all your brain actually wants to do is veg out, watch TV, play video games, and consume media. It's weird, isn't it?
So can I give you a really cool recent example of this?
Go for it.
So you'll notice that obviously we follow each other on the Apple Watch and stuff like that, and we keep each other relatively up to date with sort of exercise and stuff like that. And you will have noticed over the last week, the week just gone, my exercise just plummeted. And I think I mentioned it on the podcast as well last week, that I just have not been exercising much.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't really know why. I'm hugely motivated when I want to. Like, obviously, when we done the half marathon, I was just like, we could do a half marathon. Let's do it. Or like this year, I was like, I want to run a certain distance. Or, that 100K challenge I've done. I'm easily motivated, and I'm pretty determined when I want to be. But for the last week, I was just like, I can't be bothered. I was getting out of bed at like 8 o'clock. Like, I was waking up normal time, but I was just lying in bed doing nothing. And I was like, I don't really know what's causing it. And it turns out it was literally a physical distraction, because I had my Switch. I would play my Switch before bed, and I'd put it in my drawer next to my bed, and I'd wake up and be like, I could just play Switch for a bit. So it'd keep me completely preoccupied. So as soon as I took the Switch away, put it downstairs, and stopped taking it up to bed with me, literally I've been up early, I've been running every day, I've been doing exercise every morning.
Yeah.
So I think there's a huge point of like, because I wasn't aware or consciously aware that I was just going, do you know what, I'm going to wake up and play Switch. I'd just wake up and be like, I can't be bothered to exercise, can't be bothered to get up yet. Let me just play the Switch for a bit. I don't really tend to sit scrolling social media on my phone. So it was one of those things that I was just like, do you know what, this is what I want to do right now, because it's there. I don't pick up my iPad and think I'm going to start work at 8. Normally I'm down at my laptop doing work at that time. I'll start a bit early and stuff like that. But yeah, it completely changed my mindset for like a whole week. No exercise, just doing nothing really, doing my dog walks, but that's it.
Wow,
It's crazy.
it's interesting because I love video games and I'm very passionate about them, but they get in the way of meaningful work more often than not, and that's okay. Sometimes it's okay to do that. Sometimes it's okay to kick back and recharge and have fun. Especially in the current sort of environment, right? That is my main primary social time. In fact, it's my only social time.
Well, this is what we were talking about before. I don't think any of us necessarily play games for the games anymore. We do it because we have to socialize, or not have to. We want to socialize, and we used to do climbing.
I was going to say,
but we swapped that out. Like when we were climbing, we were not playing games. We're not like, do you know what? Let's skip climbing and just sit in and play video games. That's like a last resort. For sure. But because it's the only thing we can do at the moment, it just made more sense to do that, because at least you get a chance to actually all relax after work and just crack on and have a bit of chat that isn't shop talk.
Yeah, absolutely. No, totally agree. I totally agree. And I think there's a time and a place for it. So, but a time and a place for it, you need to control that. And I think, I'm glad that you've done what you've done, because, getting up in the morning and playing games does not set your mind up for how you need to be that day in order to be effective. You're setting your intention of, I'm just going to chill, and if you're doing that at the start, rather than having a really good, solid morning routine like exercise, reflection, setting your intentions for the day, etc., your whole day is going to be affected as a result of it. And your mindset and your mood and your kind of general, mental well-being, I guess you could say, is going to be affected by that. So, it's interesting how we have to go and feel the bad thing in order to then make the change to go back to the good thing.
Well, that's what I was saying, is now that I've acknowledged it and kind of put it out in the open, I know not to take my Switch to bed. I know that sounds like I sound like a flipping child when I say that, but it was like one of those things I didn't really notice that was impacting me, and I didn't really think, do you know what, I need to make a change, until I moved it and was like, right, I'm getting up, because I'm sat in bed and I'm thinking, I'm up, I'm awake, because I switch on at the same time every day. I've got my little automated light that turns on, so I'm awake. Just sat there thinking, well, I've got nothing else to do. What do I normally do? Right, I go out exercise and I go out do something. And I'm back in that positive mindset. I'm back in terms of working hard and applying focus to my daily job because of it. And that's the thing. I haven't made music for a couple of weeks. As soon as I binned off the Switch, I had an EP, and then even yesterday I made another 2 songs after work, just because I was like...
Amazing.
And it's like, I would attribute that literally down to exercise. And I'm not talking like strenuous exercise. I'm not getting up and deadlifted. I'm just going out for a light run just to get a bit of fresh air and actually experience the outside for a bit. And it's because it's before everyone else is up. It's not busy, it's nice. I think it's also attributed to the fact that it was icy cold last week.
Yeah, it was bad.
It wasn't just brisk. It was super, super cold. I managed to stand on that little lake behind my house. So
oh, no way.
Cold, yeah.
Wow. It was very cold. And we bought an oil-filled radiator, because we had a smart meter installed, just as an aside. It was so cold, we had a smart meter installed, and we were spending like £5 or £6 a day just heating the house, since it was insane. And so we bought an oil-filled electric radiator, so that rather than heating the whole house, we could kind of take turns in terms of heating the rooms that we were in, because we weren't in most of the house. I was in this
2
office.
rooms, yeah.
Kaylee was in her office, and it was like, well, why are we heating the whole house? And and we cut like £3 per day off of our bill, which is, I know it's not a big deal, but actually it's much better for the environment and all that good stuff, I guess, as well. So it was very, very cold. So kudos to you for actually getting out, now, and getting out, this past week, and hopefully it continues next week. And,
exactly. Yeah,
I need to get back on my exercise bike next week. I need to set some proper intentions in terms of doing that, because it does make me feel better, but it's just getting that motivation to do it,
No, I completely agree.
So we talked about your immediate distractions. We've talked a little bit about the physical distractions as well, with your phone and with the Switch. We'll kind of circle back to that in a bit. I was quite keen to understand what you meant by longer term, because I've kind of structured the way that I see my distractions differently. So I'm quite keen to understand what that means to you, and perhaps I'll kind of expand upon what I mean in a bit.
So mine might actually come off as a bit primitive when I explain it out loud, but one of the longer term distractions I think that is important to be acknowledged is being hungry and being thirsty. It's a longer term distraction. If you don't do anything about it, it gets worse. And you subconsciously, you're always thinking, do you know what, food, or I should get a glass of water, but you don't. Like I now have like a Streaks app that says, drink 4 glasses of water. So I wake up and I'm immediately like, right, there's my cup, start drinking.
Yeah.
Literally in my hand right now. And I think they're more longer term distractions because you're not sitting there thinking constantly, oh, I'm hungry, and being like looking around, oh, I can smell food. But you do, it distracts you from what you really want to achieve. And I think it's worth acknowledging. I have longer term distractions as building work because my neighbour has been building on their house for about 3 weeks now. And I'm
Oh my God,
livid.
that must be so irritating.
But I'm a typical person who has not gone around to complain and be like, you know what, I'm working here. I'm working at home, I just let him get on with it,
People have to do work, don't they? I guess it's
Exactly.
more challenging in the current environment because everybody's working from home, but, life goes on, right? I'm keen to dig into the hunger thing that you just mentioned because I'll politely push back on that and say that I don't think that hunger for me impedes me from getting things done. Sometimes actually it's the opposite. So if I'm overfed or if I'm always satiated, then I will my energy levels will just go into the ground, right? But there's something like primitive about being a little hungry. I'm a little hungry at the moment, right? But I'm alert and I'm wired and I'm ready to rock and I feel really energized. But I have a little, I need something. And I think it's something primitive in your brain that kind of, because you're hungry, because you're a little bit, need to eat soon, you're a little bit more there.
No, it must be different for certain people. I mean, I kind of go between a state of being constantly hungry and that is distracting for me because and especially for Kerry because her stomach grumbles at the flipping table behind me. I've got River who's grumbling. Like I'm constantly hearing...
Dan, this isn't a show where you can just moan about your life,
I thought it was. That's next week.
That's next week. Kerry's doing this and River's doing that. I'm joking.
You have to live here. You have to swap out for a couple of days. It sounds like you've got a peaceful life.
Yeah, it's pretty peaceful over here.
I don't get fed.
Nothing crazy happens. But no, I get it. It's a horses and courses kind of thing. And I was just giving my experience of it. But I can imagine that, if you need to feel satiated in order to be at peak performance, it must be so distracting to not be there.
Yeah. And just watch yourself at around lunchtime before you're about to eat and how productive you are at that point. For me, I just end up getting to a point where I'm so hungry. If I don't eat, I'm not really able to function.
Oh, it gets to a point where I'm so hungry I need to eat something in order to function. I guess I'm talking more around the maybe 45 minutes to an hour before then, where I'm kind of like, I'm feeling it in the top of my stomach. I'm feeling the
golden hour,
yeah, the golden hour. And I'm thinking more that sort of time than, you're right. When it gets to like 1:45, I'm like, I could eat someone. I'm so hungry.
So there's a big flip side to this because I found that this is only really associated to my day-to-day work. That I feel that way, that I can get distracted easily by many things, which is obviously my hunger. Because when I work on music, if it's a weekend and I've sort of, we used to be able to go out, Kerry would go out for a day or whatever, see her parents, whatever. And I'd sit upstairs and I'd start making music maybe about 10 o'clock whenever it's suitable to not piss off the neighbours.
Yeah.
And I would just go all the way throughout the day till like maybe 3 o'clock. And then I would just go, do you know what? I haven't eaten. I haven't eaten anything at all. I've just been sitting upstairs with a bottle of water because that's when the kind of laser focus comes into it. And as soon as I stop,
that's hella
I'm like,
laser mode.
Jesus, I'm fully starving at this point.
And I think actually being creative like that, it's very easy to get into that mode because you're almost in some sort of, not a trance, but you are so focused because you want to get to that point where you've created something. And I think that knowledge work it doesn't quite get you into that same zone, I don't think, because the feedback loop isn't quite there in the same way. So if you're working on some documentation, it's just mentally draining without that dopamine feedback loop of this is gratifying and rewarding. Whereas if you're making music, you do a take, it sounds amazing, boom, dopamine. You do another take, it sounds great, boom, dopamine. I think it's probably because of that. I don't know, I'm not a scientist.
No, but it
makes sense, right, intrinsically. So, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating because I used to be the same. When I used to do music more frequently than I do now, I would, same as you, start at 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I would go the whole day. And I wouldn't even realise that I hadn't drunken anything, I hadn't eaten anything, and it would be 3 or 4 o'clock, and I would just, come back out of the matrix. I'm in the matrix a lot, it seems today. But I'd sort of disconnect myself and be like, holy crap, I need to eat something. I feel faint.
Yeah, but that's my point, is that there's different spectrums when it comes to being distracted. And I do feel, maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but largely I suspect people will be much more easily distracted in their daily work than versus doing something, let's not say we don't enjoy our jobs, but doing something they truly enjoy. When we're at climbing, none of us have our phones or our watches, and none of us are like, oh, watch out for that. We're just we're climbing up, down, have a conversation, up, down, nothing to distract you there, because obviously you enjoy it and you get, you're exercising as well. But yeah, I'd be keen to look at some statistics for that, if I'm completely honest. But how are you going to survey people and say, do you find your job fun? Everyone's going to go, yeah, it's all right. It's all right.
I think by and large, the people enjoy their jobs. People enjoy parts of their jobs. I think it's impossible to enjoy every single part of your job. And because there's parts of all jobs that are so, jobs are so diverse, there's always going to be parts of it that aren't your favorite. Doing administration and all of that sort of stuff is probably the least favorite part of my job, but I know I need to do it. So I've put systems around it to make sure that it's as easy as possible. Right. But I think doing something like music, perhaps because it is a hobby for you, it is still something that, there is no pressure of making money or anything like that necessarily. It's probably easier to just get into that flow, and I don't think that you can kind of really compare apples with apples, making music, producing music, to writing a sales proposal or writing a technical document.
Yeah, I don't think people have that as a hobby.
No, that's what I mean. I don't think you can really compare the two. I would be very surprised if someone said, oh, my hobby is writing technical documents, and they got that same kind of laser focus feeling from writing something like that as we would get from, writing some really cool music, or, even playing a video game and getting to that next, part of the game. That's something that you can invest 2 or 3 hours in without even thinking, without even realizing that you've done that. And,
so we're basically saying, on the whole, distractions are subjective.
Yeah, I guess they are. Yeah, I guess they are.
Truly, we allow ourselves to be distracted. I get it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So sorry, we went off topic there a little bit, but we were talking about hunger, but within the context of your longer term distractions.
Yeah, I've kind of alluded to what we were talking to last week in terms of battle stations, because I've put that mess and clutter is a huge distraction for me. I like when I'm sat and doing stuff that perhaps I don't want to do, or long documents, technical documents. If there's stuff on my desk, I'll just play with it. I've got a notepad, I've got a pen, I've normally got a pen in my hand, and I'll be fiddling. I'm very much I don't want to call myself a fiddler. But I
did it for you, Dan.
Yeah,
so
I knew someone was
we're here now.
Even if I have a cup on my desk, I'll just occasionally pick it up, and that's like a reminder. I should probably get some water, or a coaster. I just move stuff around when I'm working. So, having a clean desk has been a good thing for my mind and a good thing for distractions. I don't look around and go, "Oh, there's a plant over there. Let me sniff that," or move the vase around my table. Yeah, exactly. I also try and apply focus by, from an actual software perspective, just having the windows open that I need. I'm not one of those that has multiple tabs. We discussed having a clean desktop, and now mine's pristine.
Nice.
I don't ever want it to change. I put something on my desktop the other day and I nearly beat myself up. I was fuming. I was actually
It's a
angry
good
at myself.
feeling.
I looked at it. Yeah, but it's like I don't have windows open to different things that may take my attention away. I don't have like sometimes I have like an article that I'm reading, but it's like I'll have that on one screen, read it, close it down, done.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling that you're very much the same. You work quite laterally, don't you?
I have a confession. No is the answer to that. To myself, I call it digital discipline. I'm full of these today, you know. Yeah, what was
Stick
it?
to
What
the
was the
hustle
other one?
muscles.
Yeah, the hustle muscle, digital discipline. It's because I've been watching Marvel films, so I'm just used to, you know, the alliteration, the Peter Parker, etc. So
It sounds like you're trying to give me ideas for song names, right?
nice. Well, happy to help.
Thanks.
So digital discipline is something that I kind of go to and fro on, I suppose, is maybe the best way of putting it. So, but it is a primary distraction. So, in a digital sense, of course. So, once I complete a task, or you know, it might be a proposal or whatever it might be, if I don't close the file, then obviously it just sits there as an open loop on my screen.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it might get buried under all the other files that I then open or the other windows that I might open. But as I go through the day or the next task, it may just end up popping up, and I'll be like, "Oh, that's the thing," and it's like, "Hello, I'm still here," you know. And that's something that does distract me because I might notice something in that document or whatever that I then go, "Oh, I might just tweak that," and then I'm diverted off of my original course and back to something that really I thought I'd already done. And so that's something that I'll kind of circle back to in terms of how I've managed to overcome that over the last couple of weeks.
To dig into that, it's worth noting that what you're talking about here is under my longer term distractions, which is pending work, which is a broad subject. Is that pending work is like a huge source of anxiety and a distraction for you if you're constantly thinking and you're flicking between windows. You're like, I still need to do that. I still need to do that. Which is why when we discussed earlier in task management in terms of like associating a due date, that's how I get around that. Where if I'm like, I've got to do something, it goes in my to-doist and I just forget about it. Document's closed. So then when I open it, I'm like, I'll do that, make that change, close it down. Obviously, I'm not like change word on proposal. If it was in your change one word on proposal, because you might as well just do it. But I don't tend to leave any documents open because they wind me up. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. But this is what I mean. You know, I'll have a due date, but the things that I'm doing today, I'll finish it, what I believe to be finished, and then I'll move on to the next thing. So, you know, I go into my Notion, I pick up the next thing on the list, and that might be an email or looking up an account on CRM or something. And it might be that the thing that I was working on before was an email, or it was looking at an account in CRM. So it might be that I'm on to the next thing, and I might get sidetracked by something that pops into the inbox, or I might get sidetracked by looking at the thing that I was last looking at and then noticing something that I need to investigate. And rather than writing a note of it and then putting it on my to-do list, I'll then just end up doing it. So it's a bit of a nightmare to overcome that level of distraction because that's the way that these systems are designed.
Yeah.
And so it's quite challenging to overcome it. And, you know, there's a few things that I've done. Light bulb moment. It's basically, I have the computer equivalent of walking into a room and then forgetting why I've gone into that room, which is very much a 31-year-old problem. You know, I'm sure that younger people have had it, but anyone of a certain age has walked into a room going, all right, I'm going to go in here. And then they've forgotten why they've gone in there. You know, they've gone into the kitchen to get something and they go, what? Why did I go into the kitchen? Why am I here? And then you walk back into the living room and you're like, oh yeah, no, it was to get a snack or whatever it might be. I have the digital equivalent of that probably 3 or 4 times a day. And it's because of the way these things are designed and actually probably the way that I use them. So digital discipline for me is making sure that I have the ability to kind of hit the big red panic button if things just get too cluttered and start again and, you know, draw myself back into laser mode, draw myself back into, that focus, that sequential working scenario. So in Keyboard Maestro, which is a little app that allows you to create custom keyboard shortcuts. It's brilliant. It's so good. I've created 2 panic buttons in inverted commas in Keyboard Maestro to try and sort of give myself that big red button to redraw my focus. So when it gets too hectic on screen, I press Control, Option, Command, and H, which hides every app. So it hides all of the windows. So it basically takes me to the desktop, right? Which on a Mac, I don't know if there's actually a button that does that. I don't think there is, but that's my keyboard shortcut where I go, right, everything's too messy, but I don't want to just quit everything. Hide everything, minimizes the equivalent of minimizes everything. And then I go, right, get back to Notion, get to my to-do list. Okay, what's next? And then I open that app. But it's all clear, but I haven't completely quit everything. It's not all that I have to reopen everything, etc. So that's my first kind of soft panic button.
Well, this is going to be fantastic because when you get your Stream Deck in the post in 7 months' time, you can assign that shortcut as a button. So you would literally have a button on your desk, not even on your desktop, on your desk where you can just lean over and press it and be like, I'm done. I'm starting again. Fresh button, spelled Phresh. Fresh.
Nice. Fresh till death. Well, Keyboard Maestro actually has hook-ins with Stream Decks as well. So it seems like that the developer has actually considered things like that. So that's pretty great. The other panic button I have is Command, Option, Control, and then Q, which quits every app. So that's like, usually at the end of the day, I'll just go, right, sod it, boom, Command, Option, Control, Q, everything's gone, everything's killed. And so, I mean, that doesn't really bother me. I usually use the hide one, but the Q is there, and it kind of does a quick reset, and it lets me get back to my action items, etc. And because everything is auto-saving anyway, there's no material risk of me losing work or anything like that. It's like, so it's quite straightforward.
So I think the same in Windows is just Windows D, and it just takes you to your desktop. Doesn't quit everything, but it takes you to your desktop. And I have that on all of my Stream Deck pages. So for the same reason, where I'm like, do you know what, if I have got something that I'm not working on anymore, or if I do end up with multiple documents, I just press that button. It takes me straight back. And it's like start again, or, somebody calls me and is like, oh, can you look at that? It's like, I don't want to have to minimize all these windows. I could just press Windows D, but it's nice to have a button.
It's nice to have a button.
Ping.
Yeah.
Smash through it.
Yeah. It is nice to have a button. Just one button. I mean, I'm really looking forward to getting my Stream Deck. I can see the potential of automation. We're going to talk about automation in a future episode, but I feel like I want to get that first and really, jump into it with 2 feet before I then have a conversation about it.
Well, that's the thing. I don't want to advise you on anything. I want to see what you do. I configured my Stream Deck before I'd even got it because I knew what I wanted to use it for, but we have very different uses for it. And I'm keen to see what you do without advising too much in terms of how, I don't know how you should use it. You'll find ways that works really well for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about your longer term distractions. We've talked about the immediate distractions. So you had a third one that was physical, and we kind of touched on a couple of those, but we've not sort of quite touched upon all of them. So was there anything else in that you wanted to highlight as something that you struggle with?
Yes, I had a big issue with looking at my phone for no reason. And I'm talking for months. And I think we discussed this about screen time. Like, my screen time's up normally because I'm doing stuff. Like, I do my Spanish on my phone or my iPad. So my screen time's, normally a few hours because I try and do like at least half hour of Spanish here and there. I say here and there, right. Like throughout the day, I want to try and get half an hour done in like little 10-minute blocks or whatever. So my screen time's up, but I noticed that at the end of a week once, my average was maybe like 4 hours. And I was like, what am I doing? Like,
4 hours.
Yeah, but so I was looking at stocks and stuff like that and crypto. I've got like different windows open. And I thought it's one of those things you acknowledge it and you're like, well, why? You see what it is, whether it's productivity apps, whether it's social media. I've got a lot of my conversations on WhatsApp. So I decided to give myself like breaks from the screen because I felt like I would just, like how you said about like walking into a room, forgetting why you were there. I would find that I was just doing that with my phone. I'd unlock it and I'd be swiping through like, all right, what's going on here? Like, oh, and then a message will pop up. Let me click through that. So I took a leaf out of your book. I think we discussed this a while back, not necessarily on the podcast, about deleting all of the apps from your home screen and just having the apps, not the apps, but the widgets that you use. So they're there.
Yeah.
Like I've got a shortcut that takes me directly into the Spanish app ready with a lesson. So I just hit that button, it sets it up. And it's not like I have to search through and find a topic to learn. It's just like, I just want to be engrossed in the language. So it's like, I'll just do a lesson.
You want to get out of the infinity pools and just get to the content.
Yeah, exactly. So I deleted all of my home apps and I just tried to step away from my phone. I tried to, stop using my phone late at night and just shut off completely. Because I think that's absurd. Like 4 hours out of a day, like I work 8-9 hours a day. How have I somehow sprinkled in there 4 hours of screen time? Maybe my phone's left open on the side, whatever.
Well,
but
to put it in perspective, my daily average this week is 1 hour and 11 minutes.
See what I mean?
And the previous week was 1 hour and 34 minutes. So you kind of get a feeling for how often I use my phone. But you know me, you try and get hold of me in the day, it's probably quite hard to do. If you're trying to just text me or WhatsApp me or whatever, I won't respond for hours because I'll be in laser mode and I just don't have any notifications switched on my phone. So there's not that temptation. So I would suggest maybe jumping in a bit further with that and just turning it all off. Just literally turn every notification off.
Exactly. So based on, and that's the whole point of this podcast, is you find out these things, you get these tips and you try and implement them. What works for you works for you. And that's what I've found is like just having the things that I need makes it so much easier. Like I do use the stocks app quite often to see what's going on, and but I can do that on my computer. I could just have a window open and look at that if I need to. I kind of put some thought into like physical separation from my phone. I'm not saying it was like a big issue for me, but it's just something I wanted to test. So I have an old flip phone and I forwarded my calls to it just to see when I go for a walk, because I was like, then I'm still available in an emergency. Yeah. But I know that if somebody needs to get in touch with me, it's not going to be a text. Like I'll get a phone call. Forwarding on iPhone's pretty simple. You just forward it to that new number. Oh, right. And I was like, it'd be nice to. A flip phone is very retro. It's kind of pathetic when you think about it, but
I love it.
I do as well. But I'm glad you said that because I was just about to slate myself.
I'm down for it. No. I love that idea.
And I've tried to apply it in terms of like, I called it the flip phone theory. It's something I was coming up with myself, obviously. So it's a work in progress. But it's the whole concept of separating yourself physically from your device, because you do get lost in a world of just having apps open. And even if you're not aware of it, you'll sometimes just see someone and they'll be scrolling through whilst they're watching TV. You'll be like, what are you up to? And they don't know what they're doing because they're just scrolling. They're not really digesting content. They're not reading anything useful. And I found like doing the podcast and stuff like that, talking about like trying to expand your knowledge and read books and stuff. I've got a ton of books that had been piling up. I don't read stuff on my phone. It's like I want to have the physical book and just like have something to read so my eyes don't strain, because you end up at the end of the day being like, I've stared at a screen. Oh, another screen. Let me move from the big screen to my mini screen. Let me move from my phone screen to my switch screen. So I was like, if I'm using something like a flip phone or physically disassociating yourself from it, I'm not going to pick up my flip phone and start looking through messages. Nobody's got that number. It literally is just a direct forward. So it's got no other purpose other than to receive emergency calls. And it was just something I was trying, because it's like, especially when I go on walks in the morning, like sometimes I want to walk for a few hours, but I still want to be reached. But if I've got my phone, sometimes I'll tend to find like I will just reach into my pocket sometimes, check, oh, someone's messaged me, or oh, that shortcut's run, that automation's run. It's like I don't want to do that, especially when you're like, especially I'm kind of trying to plan for when we eventually get to hang out in person again with all our friends. It'd be nice to just be like, yeah, I'm reachable on my phone. Like, give me a call if you want to talk. But other than that, I'm going to be spending time trying to, maybe listen more to people and get more involved and be less distracted. And if it means using some quirky little flip phone, then whatever.
If it works, it works.
Exactly. It's one of those things I was just trying to see what happens. And yeah, I'm applying some theory to it and see what happens.
Well, that sounds interesting, mate. I would be interested I would set you a challenge where you move to that flip phone for a week full time. That would be very interesting, right? So if you went and just put your phone away, kept it on charge somewhere, and moved to that literally full time, because I get what you're trying to do when you're on your walk. I mean, I don't check my phone when I'm walking. That's when I read books, so I'm very much engrossed in what I'm listening to. So I don't have the same problem as you, but when I'm struggling to get motivated and to do something, that is when I will be more active on my phone. I'll be checking Reddit, or I'll be, in a WhatsApp group or whatever it might be. I've deleted everything else from my phone. I don't have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. That's all gone. But I've kept Reddit on there because I like looking at desk setups, and I don't want to stop doing that yet. I'm not ready to let that go. But I'd be interested to see what completely disconnecting would do for you, or maybe to you.
Yeah, but that's my point though, is you don't know unless you try. And we do live in this world where you've got so much information available at your fingertips, and it's kind of one of those things where everyone's like, oh, is that fact correct? Let me just Google it. It's like, well, what if it wasn't there? Just try and, pop a note down, or try and remember and go back and look it up or something. But yeah, I just wanted to see what it was like and try and experience that kind of, I don't want to say it's a different way of life. Obviously it's not, but
I think it is.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe trying it for full days and see what happens.
Well, there's my challenge to you, Dan. It's your choice whether you choose to accept it or not. If you don't, you're a coward, but, that's your choice.
I react poorly to being called a coward, so.
I know you react poorly to challenges where people are questioning your integrity. You're like, I must do this. So am I manipulating you, Dan? Yes, I am.
Am I going to fall for it? You're goddamn right.
Excellent. So there was one thing that I wanted to share over and above what we've talked about so far. If you'll humour me for this, because the way that I look at distraction, I've sort of chunked it into 3 categories. We've talked about fighting my chimp brain, and we've talked about digital discipline. The third part is entirely a problem I've created for myself, and it's I can't think of a better way of putting it, but being the oracle. And without sounding, so I'll explain, because just that title sounds, like I have a sense of self-importance that is slightly too big for my boots.
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, I'm very self-aware, Dan. That
he's beginning to believe.
I am all ego. I'm very aware of who I am. So I've painted myself into somewhat of a corner in my professional life where I have set myself up to be the go-to person for a number of different things. Now, in truth, I love it. It's exactly what I want. It's exactly, it gives me intrinsic worth. It makes me feel like I'm, contributing to a bigger cause and all of that good stuff. But it does mean that it gets tricky not to get distracted by other people's problems. Now, that has expanded somewhat as my role at work has expanded in the last year. And the result of that expansion, and also my own internal sort of campaign to become that go-to person, means that I'm asked to join lots more Teams meetings than ever before. And the current climate has meant that actually those Teams meetings are more and more frequent. And these meetings take away ultimately from getting my time to follow up on, the sales stuff that I need to do. And so I kind of see those meetings as like planned distractions, which sounds counterintuitive, right? To have a planned distraction, but that's kind of how I make it right in my brain. So they're not all planned distractions, though. I'll hasten to add. People will just ring me, and I get the little notification coming up that someone is phoning me on Teams that I don't know, who wants to pick my brain about something that isn't part of what I need to do. And so that does happen. And look, I do oblige them most of the time because I do the same. I try not to send emails. I try and just phone because I get a quicker answer, and I'm one of those annoying people, but I am who I am. So the way that I try and do both, because I don't want to stop doing that. I want to continue doing that because I do enjoy it, but I want to equally make sure that I have enough time for the things that I need to get done. And I use something called focus time, which is actually from Office 365. It's part of that Cortana thing where schedules.
Because you get like an email in the day as well, don't you? At the beginning of the day to say like you focus this amount of time. Yeah, I've seen that.
Exactly.
I haven't actually delved into it, so.
It basically just blocks out time when it's available in your diary for quote unquote focus time. So I've gone over and above that, and I actually schedule my own focus time. And so in my organization, there's a culture that if there is a slither of free time in your diary, someone will try and put a meeting in there. Someone will be like, oh, he's free at 7:30 on a Friday. Boop. Let's just put a little meeting in there. Boop. You know, it's a point of frustration. But if I block out some time for me, people will respect that. They'll say, oh, you've got something in there, so I won't put something in there. You've got focus time, and people tend to respect that. And the nice thing about focus time is, when you're using it in conjunction with everything else, your calendar, and all of our phone calls now are on Teams, it automatically puts your Teams into Do Not Disturb.
Yeah, or in a meeting. For WebEx Teams, it puts you to in a meeting. It's cool.
Yeah. So that's good. So that means that then it doesn't then pop up with all the notifications and things like that. So that is positive. Now, for the times where I'm not focusing in focus time and I don't want to be disturbed, I have set up another keyboard shortcut which puts my Mac into Do Not Disturb mode. So it's Control Option Command D, and that then just switches on Do Not Disturb until I switch it off.
Sounds like another
and so
Stream
that then
Deck
blocks
button.
all notifications. I know it's going to be something that I put on the Stream Deck when I get it, but actually getting a Stream Deck at the moment, it just seems to be impossible. So it's on order. It's going to arrive at some point in the next month. So, but in the meantime, I'm just going to use my crazy combinations of keyboard shortcuts, which actually, to be fair, as long as I remember them, they've been pretty successful so far. So I have another one that I just want to share with you, which is not related to any of this, where if I hit Control Option Command P for podcast, it opens Notion on the left-hand side, which is where I have all the show notes. It opens the Discord window on the top left, which is where I see your ugly mug. And then it opens Audio Hijack in the bottom right-hand side of the screen, which is what I use for actually recording my audio. And so with one keystroke, it's bang, 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 and it's there, it's ready to go, because all of the presets are all set up. All I need to do is navigate to the relevant note in Notion, and away you go. So I just wanted to share that.
So you mentioned when we discussed this before that you're not too hot on context switching, but that sounds very much like context switching to me.
I've got my little toe just dipped into the context switching the context switching lake, and we're going to talk about that on another episode, and I want to immerse myself fully in it first before I can then talk with any conviction about what I've found. Do you see what I mean?
No, I agree.
So yeah, so the thing I wanted to just wrap up with, if that's okay, is firstly, I want to get some ideas from you in terms of what would you give in terms of tips for staying focused? What are the things that you do to help you stay focused? Because I've got some tips which we've even talked about on this, as we've gone through the last hour. But yeah, I just wanted to see if you had any parting quick tips for anybody who is struggling to stay focused.
Yep. For one, I always bang on about this, but someone at work asked me about it in terms of how do I stay productive. And tip number one is to install Todoist, right? Or any other to-do app. It can be whatever you use.
Are you sponsored by them?
I wish. But it is literally that, because you apply intent to every day in terms of what you want to do. And that, for me, is like a key source of not being distracted. Although all of the points I mentioned earlier about like physical distractions, they can't be helped. Like, I'm not going to put an office cubicle around my living room, or, I'm not. Maybe I will switch to a phone that's not going to distract me. Who knows? That's something that I'm going to work on, and just I can test it and see what happens. But get an app or a notepad, whatever you want to do. Write down what you have to achieve today and assign some time to it. That's kind of it for me. That's my biggest thing. And blocking out time for yourself. Like, if you want to have a lunch break, block out in your calendar so you know what's going on. I also, set a timer for when I want to work. That's using Forest or using a button on the Stream Deck, and I've got it set to a 25-minute timer. And before I press it, I'll sit there and think, well, what am I going to do? Because then if Kerry comes in, starts talking to me, or something happens, I'm like, well, I can deal with that in 10 minutes. I've got 10 minutes left on the timer. Or Kerry says, can I borrow you for something? It's like, yeah, in 10 minutes, done. Not like a hypothetical 10 minutes. It's a literal 10 minutes. Or I'll be like, yeah, I'll be about in about 9 minutes or whatever. So they're kind of my tips. Set a timer, and just work with intent. Like, don't sit at your laptop for no reason. Like, if you're going to open up a document, think about why you're opening the document and what you want to achieve. If you're starting a document fresh, like, see if you can find a template for it, or an old version of it, so you're not having to start from scratch, because then you don't have to do all the formatting and crap like that. And that's part of the biggest, the automation work I've been doing is that's a huge part of it is having templates. So I don't have to, filter through months worth of documents to find something that was similar to then repurpose it. It's like everything has intent now.
Removing the barriers for getting the thing done by setting your workstation up in the right way is so important. So I agree with you. That's really good advice, I think.
And what about yourself? Have you got any top tips?
I have some top tips about staying focused without getting distracted. So I've talked about some of them already. The 5-minute rule is brilliant. I'll just do this for 5 minutes. That works most of the time for me if I'm really struggling. So that's my kind of top tip number 1. Number 2 would be do things sequentially. So start one thing and then finish it. Don't start 3 things at once or one thing and then another thing and then another thing. Do it until it's done.
I'm a big advocate of that. That's where the list helps, because you do actually get like a bit of a buzz, not physical, but you actually subconsciously get a bit of a buzz by striking something off the list or putting a tick next to it and saying, I've done that. Because even if you've only achieved 3 out of the 20 things you need to do, you can look at the end of the day and go, right, I've only got 17 left to do. Other things, like inadvertently, other things will pop into your list as the day goes on. So it's important to not feel defeated. But I think we were going to cover off like a whole section on failures and dealing with that kind of stuff, because you don't, it's all well and good saying that we succeed with a lot of the stuff we aim to do by being more productive, but there's still the element of stuff not working out often.
Very, very much so. And I think that, I want to spend a lot of time talking about that and about how failing fast is better than being afraid of failure, which, is a common sort of piece of feedback from anybody. So we'll stick a pin in that and pick it up when we have more time to delve into it. So the other 2 that I had in terms of top tips was using music or sound to trick your brain into focusing. So what I do as an example of that, whenever I have my focus time, I play a specific playlist in my Apple Music library.
I have the title on repeat.
No, I think actually music with lyrics is really bad for concentration. I would pick just instrumental, lo-fi, chill hip hop, and that's my go-to. Sometimes it might be classical music, but less so. It's usually the same lo-fi hip hop playlist that I just play. I don't even like hip hop that much, but it's just good to just have it in the background.
Like cafe music or coffee shop music on whatever, Apple Music, Spotify. That's what I tend to do as well, but I don't associate it with intent or distractions. But yeah, it's cool that you do.
It's something that just sets my brain up in the way that it's like, okay, it's work time now, and this is the time where I strap on the feed bag and get some work done. Even to the way that I set my lights. So obviously I've got a load of hue lights in this office, and I set them to a particular color and a particular brightness when I'm trying to get work done, because it's just setting that zone for work. So, and that helps me not get distracted. So that's a really good one for me, and hopefully that will help other people. And the last one is make commitments, which sounds strange, but there's nothing like a deadline to help focus your mind. Obviously set realistic commitments with people, but don't leave things open-ended. And even if it doesn't need a commitment, set it anyway. Because if you tell someone, I'm going to get this to you by Friday, or I'm going to get this to you by the end of today, and you use the word, I'll commit to get this to you by X, that will do a world of good for your focus on actually getting that thing done, because work expands to the time that you give it. So if you have an hour to do something, you will most likely get it finished in an hour, right? And it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be done most of the time, right? But if you give something half a day, it will take half a day to do, and you'll pine over it and you'll pore over all of the details. And actually, it's not necessary because it's usually not an important thing. You've just got to get it done and out the door. So yeah, that would be my last piece of advice. Have a busy schedule, be busy, and set a deadline for things. Make commitments to people to get things to them, and you will get things to them, and you will clear them off of your decks more quickly without getting distracted.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I heavily lean on the calendar for this. Like in Outlook, I lean on my calendar to be like, I say I use Todoist, and I really do often, but I also just like will block out half an hour and be like, I'm going to work on this for half an hour. So it's like one of those things that you do your daily shutdown or cool down, whatever you called it. I can't remember. I think it's like a shutdown process. Yeah. And I like to do that sort of weekly and just look at what I've done over the week and say, well, actually, I've dedicated X amount of time to this, or, and I categorize it via color because I'm a child, and I look at what was internal meetings and what was, external, what was client work, what was for myself kind of thing. And I think it's really useful. Use the tools that are there for you.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our show. And if you really, really liked it, please consider giving us a 5-star rating. That really helps us out, it helps us grow our audience. So, only if you loved it, but if you did, then that'd be really good. If you'd like to hear more from Dan or myself, please follow us on Twitter at ThriveGuysPod. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Say goodbye, Dan.
Goodbye.